Hi, everybody. I know this is very late. Sorry about that. Very sorry about that. Too many things came out. Attack on Titan, Genichi, what have you. Fairy Tale episode number 121. Let's get into it. Okay. Basically, left off from last week. Got Zareth. He's on Shmadukorf. Hades. He's on Hades' ship with the other two schmuckos, Rusty Rose and that other guy. And, big conversation between them. He's basically telling them, that something about Zareth knowing the weight of a life. That's what the conversation was about. He was basically explaining to him and telling him, those keys that they found were useless. And he's basically telling them, you are to blame for what has happened here. And he says, you must, for your sin, for the sins that these people committed. And basically, he was already awake, but he was trying to limit casualties. He can't use his magic. That's what he was trying to do. And basically now he's going to attack Hades and the other two schmuckos, Rusty Rose and the other guy, because they committed two sins. First sin was waking arconologia, which they have done, and he's blaming them. He's blaming Gilmore Hearts and Hades for that situation. So, long story short, he's going to attack them, so to speak, and then we move on from that to Meredy and ultear. This was probably one of the touching scenes I've seen in Fairy Tale. I remember reading it in the manga, but seeing it animated brings up to a different aspect. It really was one of those scenes when you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna cry. I almost cried. Very close to crying. Pretty close to crying. A tearjerker here and there. Basically, she was going on about, yes, it was me. She really was not. She wasn't asking for her forgiveness. She wasn't asking for Meredy's forgiveness. She was asking that I'm going to say I'm sorry. And she says, I know you want to kill me. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, ultear, she brings out this sword and just stabs herself. And then she's goodbye. And then she falls, she's like, oh dear! She screams, Meredy screams her name. And she's fallen to the bottom of the sea. And Meredy gets her because of the link thing. And it's really amazing that now in the manga they're best friends and everything. It's just, wow. So, and she says, I want to live with you. I want us to live together. Don't die. I don't want to be alone. She's going on about that. And then they're hugging. It's a nice scene. A nice touching scene. So, we go from that to, I believe, back to the ship. Gilmore Hearts' ship. And you see Hades, he's falling. And he just, blows the shit out of that ship. Well, that's later on, actually. And then he realizes, he hears it. It's coming. Arconologia. He's like, Arconologia. And to some extent, Zareth didn't want this to happen. Surprisingly enough. He didn't want arconology. See, I think that's what it was. See, him realizing himself, him realizing to his full potential power, waking him up or coming to terms of, he didn't really wake him up, but coming to terms and becoming the way he is now, that also would awaken arconologia. So, we go from that to Cana and Lucy. But the nights before that, Natsu's like, I want to fight anyway. He wants to, Natsu's saying he wants to do the S-Class. He said, okay, Natsu, if you could defeat me, Markov tells him, if you could defeat me, you could be an S-Class wizard. Okay, boom! He hits him with his big fist. And that's the end of that. So we move on from that to Cana and Lucy. And Cana's just telling Lucy, I'm really sorry. She's sorry that what she did and so on and so forth. And they're hurting from the wounds they endured and what have you. and they're saying she's saying sorry about what she did, leaving Lucy high and dry, and so on and so forth. And we go from that scene to Gildarts and Natsu, and they're fishing. Fishing. And Gildart's like, it's a man's sport. It's like romantic journey between life and death, between man and fish, and so on and so forth, he's saying. And just when Natsu's about to get a fish, here comes Kana and Lucy. And Lucy's telling Gildarts, Kana wants something very important to tell you. And he's like, oh, wait a minute, let Natsu get the fish. And then all of a sudden Lucy grabs him, they run over. And then they're having a heart-to-heart talk and between Kana and Gildarts. And she basically is telling him about the reason why she just tells him the reason why I joined Fairy Tail was to find my father, because he's a fairy tale wizard. And then just, it's you. And he's like, ah! He's like, the reaction from Gildarts was so funny, because he starts naming girls' names. This is actually a funny part. Part of it was emotional, and the other part was pretty fucking funny. He started naming names. Oh, this girl. And then he's like, and then she says like, well, I'm your daughter. I'm from such a pervy old man. she says to him, kind of, and then he hugs her, and she wants to walk away and say we're not going to act like family or so on and so forth. But then Gildarts hugs Kana, and it's like an emotional scene between the two, and he got Natsu and Happy in the back, and they're crying. Ah! And then Lucy's like thinking to herself at that moment, when I get back, I should reconcile with my father as well. And that's when, dun dun dun, we go into the sky and we see the shadow. At first we see Zeref. He's on top of the ship, of Gilmore Hearts' ship, and there's a big beam coming out of the ship, black beam, and of energy. Magical energy. And we see the date. And it says year 784. It says December 16th, year 784. And as it came, and Lucy's basically narrating what was going on, saying, we never saw it coming, this attack. And all you see the shadow of arconologia. Oh yeah, here we go. Yes. You see the shadow of arconologia. It's not like you don't see any of that. You just see the shadow. So moving right along, that's pretty much how it ends. Ends right there. Preview, but the real crazy thing about this episode, the preview. I'm like, we don't see it completely. You don't see arconologia in the preview. You see his claw, you see his face, his mouth, but it's darkened. It's darkened. You don't see the color of the skin, so it was like, no, I wanted to see. But anyway, this was a good episode. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. It's next week's. Next week's going to be special. So this was a good episode of Fairy Tail. I like what I saw, but next week's is special, and I think what I'm going to do is tomorrow, 2 videos on Fairy Tail. One for the discussion that I did, and another one for something that's connecting. Something important to state. This has been Bonkai 922. Good episode. See you guys later.